On the 4th of September 2013, the Auditor-General tabled his audit report on the Asset Confiscation Scheme. The Auditor-General provides assurance to Parliament on the accountability and performance of the Victorian public sector. The Audit Act 1994 defines the powers and responsibilities of the Auditor-General and the Victorian Auditor-General's Office. Under this Act, the Auditor-General conducts and reports on both financial audits and performance audits. The Auditor-General's mandate covers over 500 entities, including government departments, hospitals, local government, water corporations, police, emergency services, universities and superannuation schemes. This presentation is a summary of the report Asset Confiscation Scheme. To read the full report, please go to our website www.audit.vic.gov.au. Asset confiscation is a tool used in response to criminal activity. The Confiscation Act 1997 enables the state to confiscate property in order to deprive people of the proceeds of offences, prevent the use of this property for further criminal activity and to deter others from criminal activity. The Act also allows the state to preserve assets for the compensation and restitution of victims of crime. Asset confiscation can only be applied in relation to certain offences, including indictable offences and more serious profit-motivated offences. The state can only confiscate tainted assets, that is, assets that have been derived from a crime or have been used or are intended to be used in a crime. The Asset Confiscation Scheme was established to guide activities in relation to the Confiscation Act and coordinate agencies working to achieve the objectives of the scheme. Between July 2007 and June 2013, the gross value of assets restrained or forfeited under the scheme was $131 million. The audit assessed how effective, efficient and economical the Asset Confiscation Scheme is in achieving the objectives of the Confiscation Act 1997. This involved examining the arrangements to identify and restrain property, management disposal of property, and the Asset Confiscation Scheme's governance arrangements. The agencies included in the audit were Victoria Police, which is responsible for identifying assets for restraint, the Office of Public Prosecutions, which obtains court orders for restraining and forfeiting assets, and the Department of Justice, which restrains, manages and disposes of high-value property. The audit also examined the oversight committees of the scheme: the Asset Confiscation Scheme Executive Management Group, which oversees the scheme and is responsible for meeting the scheme's objectives, and the Confiscation Operations Committee, which provides advice to the Executive Management Group on operational matters. The audit concluded that the scheme is not operating as effectively or efficiently as it should be. Its ability to deprive people of the proceeds of crime and to deter and disrupt further criminal activity is hampered by weaknesses in how assets are identified and poor governance of the scheme. Victoria Police is responsible for identifying assets for confiscation through its investigative processes. However, it is not maximising opportunities to identify such assets related to profit-motivated, serious and organised crime. The Office of Public Prosecutions and the Department of Justice are generally performing their functions in relation to the scheme effectively and efficiently. However, across the scheme, significant governance weaknesses are limiting the ability of the agencies to work together effectively to implement the government's policy objectives. We'll now move on to the specific findings of the audit. The audit examined scheme operation. While Victoria Police is the driver for asset confiscation, the audit found that its ability to perform this role is undermined by capacity and capability weaknesses, and ultimately, it is not maximising opportunities to identify assets for confiscation. The Criminal Proceeds Squad, a unit of Victoria Police, is responsible for identifying assets for restraint. The existence of a dedicated squad is positive, however, it is not operating as effectively or efficiently as it could. The scheme's focus is on serious and organised crime. However, in practice, up to 60% of the Criminal Proceeds Squad's work relates to victims of crime. While victims' compensation is a purpose of the Confiscation Act of 1997, it is unclear why the squad is performing this function, at least to the current extent. The focus on this type of work detracts from what should be its focus: profit-motivated, serious and organised crime. To identify assets for confiscation, the Criminal Proceeds Squad has adequate investigative tools and sources of information such as financial institutions and taxation information. However, the squad is not making full use of these tools and therefore may be missing important assets. The other agencies involved in the scheme necessarily react to the work generated by Victoria Police, and while opportunities exist to enhance their operations, both the Office of Public Prosecutions and the Department of Justice are generally performing their functions effectively and efficiently. In relation to the scheme's governance, issues significantly undermine its effectiveness. The scheme's current governance structure is a joined-up activity. That is, it involves cross-agency coordination with input from more than one agency. The audit found that the scheme is not adequately joined up. There has been a lack of coordination due to weaknesses with the oversight committees. While routine informal contact occurs, there has until very recently been only infrequent formal contact between the scheme agencies. In addition, there are weak governance arrangements, including the lack of scheme planning, the absence of joint datasets, and the absence of any robust assessment of risks affecting the scheme. The Asset Confiscation Scheme Executive Management Group, which was established in response to VAGO's 2003 audit, has failed to fulfil its roles and in particular has not set the strategic focus for the scheme, nor has it ensured that objectives are being achieved. The group has failed in its responsibilities for the overall performance of the scheme, demonstrated by the fact that it has known of persistent weaknesses of the scheme for at least 5 years, yet these weaknesses have not been addressed. Neither this body nor the other oversight committee, the Confiscation Operations Committee, met between October 2010 and October 2012. There is no documented or reasonable explanation for this. Effective planning for asset confiscation does not occur at the scheme level. There is no plan that brings together information about the scheme's opportunities and risks, or that clarifies its objectives and outcomes, how performance will be assessed, or its direction or priorities. Across the 3 core agencies, the quality of planning also varies. The absence of effective planning is most notable at Victoria Police, which is essentially the driver of scheme activity. This undermines the scheme's ability to achieve its objectives. Risk management across the scheme is inadequate. While a 2012 evaluation identified 5 risks for the scheme, no ratings were applied to the risks and no mitigation strategies were identified. Of note, there were no risks identified in relation to the governance of the scheme. Risk management at the agency level was inadequate at Victoria Police, but more advanced at the Department of Justice and the Office of Public Prosecutions. In relation to scheme performance, the audit found that it is not known how well the scheme is performing, as it lacks an effective performance framework. VAGO identified this in our 2003 report on public sector agencies, recommending that the Department of Justice develop overarching performance measures for the scheme. While the Department accepted this recommendation, this has not occurred. The scheme's main externally reported performance measure is assets converting in 90 days, which is included in the state's budget papers. This measure does not fairly represent the performance of the scheme. It has no logical and consistent relationship with the scheme's objectives. The scheme is not responsible for achieving it, rather a single agency within the scheme, and it cannot be used to assess achievement with the scheme's objectives. New improved measures have been proposed. As well as the budget paper measure, the Department of Justice and Victoria Police report to the Auditor-General on some aspects of the operation of the Confiscation Act. The report provides information beyond that required, which is a positive initiative. However, like the budget paper measure, it does not report on the performance of the scheme. While there is no performance framework, 3 commission reviews of the scheme have been undertaken since 2008. Each has identified weaknesses related to the scheme's performance as a whole, although these weaknesses have remained largely unaddressed. In addition to a scheme performance framework, each agency should have its own performance framework. However, the Department of Justice and the Office of Public Prosecutions have only elements of frameworks, and Victoria Police has no performance framework or measures that enable it to assess its performance in relation to criminal proceeds and asset confiscation. The audit made 25 recommendations, all of which were accepted by the relevant agencies. There were 8 recommendations made to the Asset Confiscation Scheme Executive Management Group, 12 to Victoria Police, 3 to the Office of Public Prosecutions, and 2 to the Department of Justice. All our reports are available on our website. If you have any questions about this or other reports, or if you have anything else you would like to discuss with us, including ideas for future audit topics, please call us on 03 8601 7000 or contact us via our website.